Coming up, it's Pride Month. We meet an Arizona entrepreneur who's paving the way. Plus, we learn about innovative programs in medical education and an international nonprofit making connections for Indigenous health. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
Arizona State University welcomes 3,500 Indigenous students from Arizona and across the nation. It serves one of the largest populations of Indigenous students among U.S. colleges and universities. We created a sense of place for tribal nations to create futures of their own making through community outreach and research, taught by world-class Indigenous faculty where they see a reflection of themselves and their experiences. Find community at ASU.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Ku'wati Hopa. Thank you for joining us. In Minnesota, a popular Native-owned restaurant can now add a major award to its list of credentials.
And the winner is Awamini.
Awamini was given the award for Best New Restaurant by the James Beard Foundation earlier this week. The highly competitive prize was presented in Chicago at an awards ceremony. The restaurant was created by the sous chef, Sean Sherman, and Dana Thompson. Congratulations poured in on social media, including from Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. Awamini is located in downtown Minneapolis. And later in our newscast, we'll be giving you an inside, in-depth look at the award-winning restaurant. In Alaska, an election is underway to fill an empty seat in Congress. Former Congressman Don Young died earlier this year, leaving his seat vacant for the first time since 1973. Because of Alaska's election laws, the top 4 candidates advanced to the state's special election in August. At the top of that list is former Governor Sarah Palin. In 4th place is Yupik citizen Mary Peltola. She is a former state legislator. This means Peltola will advance to November's general election. And in 5th place is Tara Sweeney, who is a Nupiaq. Sweeney is a former Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs. June is the 3rd anniversary of the Canadian government's final report into the inquiry of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. The federal government held a press conference to mark the occasion, but as APTN's Fraser Needham reports, they got an earful.
You can feel the frustration from people like Ling Gru of the Native Women's Association of Canada.
We're 3 years into waiting for some actions to be taken, and instead of reporting on the actions you're taking, you're reporting on what people saying still needs to be done. Well, we don't need to know that.
For Hilda Anderson-Piers of the National Family and Survivors Circle.
I cannot state this enough. Without the political will to create transformative change, this genocide will continue. The government must be accountable for its responsibility to the 231 calls for justice. They are legal imperatives and they are not optional.
And 2SL LGBTQIA+ spokesperson Sylvia Miracle says government and other organizations have a long way to go in making MMIWG initiatives totally inclusive.
And we're also looking to be involved in discussions about policy changes, about organizational changes as well. To not just sort of tack us on at the end. And right now, you can find the acronym everywhere, but you can't find proof that there's real inclusion.
Organizations say Ottawa has made some progress on the calls to justice in the final report, but after 3 years, it has been both too slow and too little. And they're wondering why the Liberals have still failed to appoint an independent ombudsperson to monitor progress.
There's no excuse for it. We really should have done it yesterday. We are working on it, and I hope to see progress with him in my department sooner.
And Justice Minister David Lametti added,
been working with national Indigenous leadership, in particular ITK, but also AFN and MNC to create that kind of body. So stripping away layers of colonialism takes time.
But Gru says doing your best and saying you're sorry just isn't good enough anymore.
There was still that glimmer of hope that today they were going to come out with something, really strong. And that did not happen. They came out with mea culpa. It's my fault. There's no explanation. It's a big problem. It's systemic. No, this is not okay.
Fraser Needham, AP10 National News, Ottawa.
A new milestone has been set for the action film series Predator. The newest film in the franchise, titled Prey, holds a significant distinction. It is the first ever film with a full dub in the Comanche Nation's language. The new Predator film takes the franchise back 300 years, where the Comanche take on the iconic alien hunters. Indigenous actor Amber Midthunder stars as the film's hero. Midthunder plays a warrior in training who protects her nation from an otherworldly threat. Comanche and Blackfeet citizen Jane Myers is one of Prey's producers. Myers says she hopes the movie changes things for her language and culture.
Think about, when you're trying to express how important language is to youth, right? But if they can turn on something that's like The Predator and watch it in Comanche, oh my gosh, I hope that the enrollment in our Comanche Nation language program, goes up 400%.
The upcoming prequel begins streaming August 5th on Hulu. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, stories of innovation in medical education and Indigenous health across the world. But first, we're celebrating Pride Month with Hair Nirvana's owner. Stay with us. Indian country today is now ICT. Hair Nirvana in Scottsdale, Arizona is run by V. He's been a mainstay in the LGBTQ community for decades. Let's find out what Pride Month means to this Dene citizen.
Pride Month is something that's really important, of course, to the gay community, and I'm celebrating it in the store by, giving flags out to people, like these little tiny flags I have here. So I'm giving those out, and I also have a Pride flag out in front of the store, and just to develop and create awareness within my own Scottsdale community to help create the awareness that that there's LGBTQ businesses and people in the community, and to know that there is support here in Scottsdale for that. My salon, of course, represents that, and I'm just really happy and excited to be able to have the freedom to be able to do that at this time. So
V related the struggles in the gay community over his 5 decades.
I grew up in I was born in 1969, so I grew up primarily like in the 80s was my era. I was in a border town of the area of Farmington and Upper Fruitland area. So I was in a border town reservation area, and that was a very, in the 80s, it was very difficult because that's when, of course, AIDS came out. So AIDS was a real devastating time for the gay community. And being a gay person, it caused a lot of pretty much a lot of anger and hate towards two-spirit gay people. And if you had any type of slightly effeminate qualities or anything that people would think that you were gay, it caused a lot of like anger, a lot of hate towards people like myself and also my friends. And it was really sad. I had a lot of friends who really suffered a lot, and I saw it was really sad to see them being called names and for just being themselves. And it's come a long ways, and I'm fortunate to be able to live here where we have a pretty good strong community, gay community here in the Phoenix Metro Scottsdale area, and the community is growing. It's definitely grown. There's a lot of support here. And being an older, I'm kind of going into my older years. So it's like I see these younger people coming in, and they kind of have a little bit better, but not like completely better. There's still a lot of friction, but we have definitely come a long ways. In fact, I just had a young man come in here to the store who is in the process of going through his transition. Forgive me, he was a young trans female. He's male to female, and he came into the store because he saw the flag. He saw the flag, and he was told by one of his colleagues, his friends, that there's an LGBT friendly store over there. We used to go over there and see what it is about. So he came in, and I was so happy to, if that's the one person that comes here, and that's the only person that comes in here that reaches out to me during this time, to me, I feel like I've done my job, because he came in here. He was a young man. He was going through a lot of struggle with his family, being a trans person, and just to be able to talk to him about it and to know that he's going to be okay. And actually, I said to him that you have a lot better than how we have had it back in the 80s and even the 70s, because people are a lot more less likely to come at you physically and to assault you. Where back then it was almost easier. There was a lot of unfortunately a lot of violent crimes that happened to a lot of the gay community, and I just kind of was comforting him, helping him to understand that it was going to be okay. And that to me made it all worth it, and it was really, that made me happy. It made me feel like all the suffering, the pain that I've endured in my lifetime has created a lot of wisdom and strength to know that the younger generation and the generation under me, they might not have family support like that young trans girl did. And now that she knows there is support out there, and there's people like myself who've gone through that process of trying to, we kind of like, what do you call it? It's like it was a dirt road. It was really like a rough res road. Now now there's pavement. So it's a lot easier for us. So the res roads are better now. They're not completely smooth, but there's still some potholes in there. But it's up to people, I feel like myself, who smooths out potholes. And I feel like there's definitely a sense of responsibility.
That was V. Newton of Hair Nirvana. When we come back, a health equity organization tells us about its mission. Indian country today is now ICT. Esperanza believes in health equity for everyone. It is an international organization based in Phoenix, Arizona. Anna Ortiz is its Global Health and Development Director.
Esperanza is a 52-year-old organization. We've always been based in Phoenix, but our roots have always been in Latin America. Our work is around removing barriers so that people can access better health and therefore better quality of life. So our work has always been with the bottom line of improving health for everyone, either through community development projects such as access to clean water, safe housing, food security, or through other more tangible things as well as like health education, nutrition education, and access to care.
Esperanza believes in the power of partnerships in Peru, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Ecuador, Mexico, and most recently, Mozambique.
Some of our current initiatives, for example, here in Phoenix, we developed a strong program during COVID-19 that's called Stove to Table, where we have a garden, we grow some harvest from that garden. We, through the use of volunteers, we cook nutritious meals for seniors that live in HUD housing. A lot of them are living with chronic disease like diabetes and therefore need a specific type of diet to kind of bring down their numbers and improve their health overall. So through that program, we deliver 200 meals a week to seniors living in HUD housing, most of them living on limited income. And abroad, one of our programs that we're really, really proud of as well. In Peru, we've helped an indigenous community that lives at the top of the Andes Mountains, the Queros community. It's very, very cold and climate change has, it's affected everyone. But for a community that lives instilled like the traditional customary ways of, stone houses with thatched roofing, it's become increasingly difficult.
Ortiz talked about the work Esperanza does to support women and girls.
I think one of my favorite is maybe the ones that are less obvious ways of helping women and girls. And one of those is our water program in Nicaragua. This program has been in place for over 20 years. It's really, really strong. Our partner organization there really are experts in water. And through helping the community build their own water systems, families then have access to a water spigot in their home, therefore alleviating women from having to go fetch water, allowing girls to, study longer, to go to school. They don't no longer have to carve out so much time in their life to do this chore, this necessary chore, because now they have the luxury of clean, potable water at home.
Esperanza builds local partnerships in the Indigenous communities it serves.
This is actually the foundation of our model for Esperanza, because it does no good for me, growing up in Arizona, living in Arizona, to go to a different country and tell them how to do things. That kind of ignores context, ignores local knowledge and all those things. So our strength is in leveraging partnerships with nonprofits that are run by people that are from there. So in each of the countries in which we work, we call it grassroots relationships, because the leaders and the people that run the organization are from those communities. Therefore, they know the issues, the priorities, the resilience, the resources on how to fix these things. So my job, really, our job at Esperanza, is to listen and help them scale up the work that they do. So we support them in doing it better and doing more of it so we can help more people.
That was Ana Ortiz from Esperanza. Earlier in the program, we reported that Awamini won the prestigious James Beard Foundation Award for Best New Restaurant. Last summer, ICT's Shirley Snavy dined at the Minneapolis restaurant. Let's take a look.
I took my family to a new restaurant on the banks of the Mississippi River Sunday. It's Sean Sherman's Dream Come True, a restaurant that features indigenous foods in the homelands of the Dakota.
If anybody wants to come and check out this new restaurant, Awamini, by the sous chef here in Minneapolis on the shores of Hahawakpa, or River of the Falls, or Mississippi as you might know it. It's a wonderful, beautiful, sacred space, and we're just excited to have a restaurant that's extremely unique and kind of the only one out there like it in the whole nation.
Sherman has hired almost 70 staff to run the restaurant, which opened as the coronavirus was waning. But due to the Delta variant, a mask mandate is back in place.
Luckily, we kind of already had kind of spaced ourselves out and didn't pack the restaurant as tight as we could have. And we also have this wonderful patio for people to spread outside.
We sampled a wide variety of indigenous foods, like what our ancestors ate, mostly locally sourced from nearby tribes. Bison, wild rice, beans, and a salad with crunchy fried crickets instead of croutons.
It's surprising how many people will eat them without saying anything, because it's not normal yet, but very few people who order that salad ask for it without the crickets.
Even my grandchildren agreed it was delicious. Then we headed to the Shakopee Mdewakanton powwow, and we arrived to catch the grand entry and Northern Cree's honoring song. Since the event was outside, there was no mask mandate, but folks seemed to be taking precautions. But I have to admit, we savored the colonization food, the Indian taco. In Minnesota, Shirley Snavy, Indian Country Today.
ICT editor-at-large Mark Trahant caught up with Dr. Don Warren at the Reservation Economic Summit in Las Vegas last month. Let's listen.
Dr. Don Warren is Associate Dean at the University of North Dakota School of Medicine and Health Sciences. He's been a regular guest on ICT over the years, and we always look forward to having a chance to catch up with him. What's new at UND?
Well, we have a lot of good things going on. Actually, InMed, or the Indians into Medicine program, has been around since 1973. So next year is our 50-year anniversary of InMed. So we have a lot of celebrations and events going on around the 50-year anniversary of InMed. And very pleased to report we've now graduated over 260 American Indian Alaska Native physicians out of InMed programming. But we also have a new Department of Indigenous Health, which is really unique. I think we're the only medical school, at least in the US, that has a Department of Indigenous Health. And within that department, we have the InMed program and also a relatively new PhD in Indigenous Health. So we have students who can get clinical training through InMed or research training through the PhD. So kind of a lot going on at UND at the moment.
You know, this is such an extraordinary time because this influx of money coming from the federal government into almost all institutions, but also the idea that there's different ways of doing things. And you've been really a leader in calling for a reform of how we should even think about some of these institutions. How does that shape now?
Well, I think we really need a movement to continue to decolonize medical education and indigenize medical education. And I work closely with the AAMC, that's the Association of American Medical Colleges. And one of the questions I ask them is, what's magical about 4 years for medical training? And it's really more of a colonized Western European approach to education, where we have a time-bound curriculum rather than competency-based curriculum. And if we think about traditional medicine training, medicine men, medicine women, their training might have been 4 years, it might have been 20 years, you know, and it shouldn't be just based on an artificial time frame. And a lot of our students struggle with that, quite honestly. So I think if you can get through in 4 years, fine. But if you get through in 6 years, you're still a doctor, you know? So that's some of the things that we're looking at. But I think long term, what we really need is an American Indian School of Health Sciences. And this school could have its own Department of Traditional Medicine. And when I look around the country now, there's, of course, over 100 historically black colleges and universities, and they have 4 medical schools at HBCUs. We have 0 tribal college medical schools. And in the year 2022, and as you're mentioning, new resources being developed to influence education and the economy, I think it's high time that we move in that direction and have our own American Indian School of Health Sciences.
One of the challenges is the size of our population. So where you put a medical school would be a really important question.
Yeah, we've put a lot of thought into this, and it has to be a city large enough to support a medical school, so it can't be in a small town. You really need multi-specialty health systems to do medical training, particularly for the clinical years. So it has to be a relatively good-sized city, ideally a city that does not currently have a medical school, because there would be pushback, I think, from existing programs. They don't like competition, quite honestly, for clinical spaces. And then we also have to have a city where there's a significant number of American Indian patients. So I think places like Rapid City, South Dakota, Flagstaff, Arizona, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and maybe have virtual campuses in more than one location, and really focus on training our next generation of healers from an Indigenous perspective, and recognize that we have our own cultural ways of knowing and cultural-based healing. In addition to that, we know that a lot of medical science was actually generated out of Indigenous medicines, including things like aspirin, for example. So we have a lot of good medical science, and I think it's not been as respected as it could be or should be by the current system. So we just need to build our own system.
One of the things that would be interesting to see is how we get kids interested early in healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things we do through InMed. InMed, again, it's been around nearly 50 years. And our summer institute, we bring kids from American Indian communities from all over the country to UND during the summer. They spend 6 weeks with us. And they do basically like a pre-medical type curriculum. So they take courses in chemistry, biology, physics, math, communication, and health. And we keep them very busy for 6 weeks, but we also have fun and social events in the nights and the weekends, and cultural events as well. So our tagline historically has been middle school through medical school, but in truth we need to go even further upstream, and we should be thinking about pre-K to postdoc and have that whole continuum with opportunities for meaningful education in health sciences, but through an Indigenous lens with Indigenous faculty.
When you look at the economy and you see how in rural communities especially, healthcare is already the largest employer. That opportunity has been missing from so many of our communities.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we're discussing here at RES 2022 is looking at the need for expanding tribal management of health systems and health programs, because healthcare is an industry. It's a business. People make money at it. And tribes just haven't participated in that industry to the same degree that we've participated in other industries. So in truth, tribes can 638 or take over the management of their health systems, but they can even develop their own durable medical equipment companies. They can develop their own home and community-based services companies, or they could do other creative things, like even having their own insurance, or even having their own research that they conduct, product development. All these things are available to us if we choose to go that route. So yes, healthcare is already a primary employer for many rural communities, but I see so many opportunities to expand that in Indian country.
We only have about 30 seconds left, but I want to ask you, one of the stories that I don't think is told enough about Indian health is how innovative folks are in the system.
Yeah, and I think we hear a lot of negative things about Indian Health Service, and in truth, it's just terribly underfunded. It's not a broken system, it's a starved system, but the people working within the system just by and large are so creative and dedicated to our people. And in truth, we could have bigger salaries working in the private sector, but the people who are working in Indian health are there because they want to be there. And the opportunities for innovation and improving outcomes are in front of us, and I'm hoping that this next generation will take us there.
Dr. Don Warren, thank you.
In Juneau, Alaska, Native people recently gathered for a cultural event called Celebration. You're never too young to have fun. Take a look. And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For more news, visit IndianCountryToday.com. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I am Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.